Happy lunch, everybody. Welcome to our community strategic planning conversation or collaboration. Sometimes I forget the titles that I create or we create. But I am Dr. J.J. Villarreal, your superintendent of schools. We're glad that you are here. I'll sit in the back and try to stay out of the way, but what we're doing is going through a strategic planning process. We want to hear from the community on what the needs are. And this is meeting 3 of 4. Our last meeting will be tonight. Our prior strategic plan ended in 2015. And so as we move forward, identifying the needs of the district and meeting the needs of a 3% growth on average every year, we're going to reach out to as many people as we can before we get deeper in that process. We do hope to take to the board this spring a 5-year plan, and again, all comments will be considered. So thanks for being here. Enjoy. Please welcome Mitzi Richardson. She's our consultant that's going to work with you today. Also, Miss Murphy and her team. She's the chief for communications here as well. Okay? Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Make sure everybody hear me. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is day 2 in Rockwall, so I'm excited to be able to interact with you and hear some of the great conversations, thoughts and ideas that are going to come out of today's community summit. So I will do some talking and sort of kind of setting the stage for some things, but then you also are going to be doing some collaborating with people that are next to you and sharing ideas. We are videoing so that people that couldn't make it can hear some of the things that come out of this session, and so that there's a lot of transparency about the ideas community members would like. So we are super excited about just hearing from you and letting your voice be heard through this process. So I'm really excited to be here. I am a consultant for Engage to Learn, which is a Texas-based company. One of the, I think, most wonderful things about it is that we're all Texas educators. So I was an educator in a traditional school district for about 17 years before making a transition where now I get to partner with school districts. The great thing about partnering with school districts is I get to, one, meet fantastic people during the community summit, and also get to help districts really think about what their highest hopes for their students are and how do we make those highest hopes a reality. So it's great for me to be able to do that across the state of Texas, and I'm super excited to be here in Rockwall. I live not too far down the road in the Colony, near Frisco and Plano, so it's just a nice little 40-minute drive in, and lots of wonderful scenery that you guys get to see every day. So the great thing about Engage is that we really are focused on a local vision for a school district. So instead of a one-size-fits-all vision, it's specific to the community of Rockwall. So what is different, what is special, what is amazing that's here, and how do we continue that, and also then elevate that to the next level. So as we talk today, we're really going to be focusing on your engagement in the process. So what are the things you really wish for your students? What are ways in which we can think about that and actually put that into action? So as we go forward, we are going to be collecting all of this input so that we can make sure we honor the things that you guys said and came out of today's summit. So really quickly, I just want to get to know who's all in the audience. So what I'm going to ask is that you share a couple of things. One, if you're not familiar with the people who are around you, you may have to do some turning or some shoulder partner. Just share who you are, what's your role, and why you are willing to give up these 2 hours in the middle of the day over your lunch hour to come to the summit. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to do that. So go ahead and interact for a little bit. All right. So hopefully you've had enough time to meet your neighbors, do a little welcome. So I just want everyone to be able to get a picture of who's in the audience. So if you're a parent of school-age children that go to Rockwell ISD schools, would you please stand? School-age kiddos. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful. Thank you. Have a seat. So one is that we just really are thankful that your midday agenda included us as we had this summit. So we appreciate your dedication to your students, to your children, and so it's great to be able to hear that perspective. So if you're a community member or a grandparent that has a connection to a school-age child, would you please stand? Yay! Awesome. And if you are a community member and you do not have school-age children, would you please stand? Yay! I love it. We're coming for you. Awesome. So it's great to have everyone here. The wonderful thing about having different types of people come to summits is that you share unique perspectives. You have some background knowledge and some ideas and things that really kind of color the way in which you want things for your students and for your children. And so all of your voices are really valued. And so we're excited for you all to be here. So we have a pretty jam-packed agenda, but hopefully the 2 hours will fly by and you won't even realize, man, I'm not hungry. My stomach's growling. So we'll try to keep it highly engaged for you. My clicker wants to work. There we go. We do have some norms. One is that we're going to really be focused on students. So when we are talking about conversations today, we're going to be focusing on students, whether they're upcoming into Rockwell ISD or in Rockwell ISD, and then also what are we doing to prepare these learners for the future beyond Rockwell ISD. So that's going to be our thought process. Please feel free. The hashtags are up on the screen if you want to tweet out. You received a comment card, a sheet of paper, that you can, as we start to do conversations, you may write down your thoughts and ideas. What we will do is we will take these up as you exit, and we're going to really transcribe it all, and so that we can provide the design team who is going to be actually designing the strategic plan. They will get to see all of your input, that raw data. So we want to be, if you've got something you want to make sure that the design team sees, please make sure that you write on your comment card. We also will have an electronic way to do this that I'll explain as we get towards that piece of the program. Okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process. The process, we're really in the engage and collaborate phase. We are really trying to engage as many community members as possible, parents, staff members, so that we can make sure we honor every single voice that has an attachment to Rockwell ISD. Then we will move into design, where we really craft out that strategic plan, and then we'll think about how do we make it actionable. And so we'll really think about, we don't want something to just be this fantastic multi-layered plan that sits on a shelf and collects dust, right? If we're here to really focus on kids, we want to make sure the things that the community wants and things we said that we're going to do actually comes to fruition. So we really want to make sure that happens, and that happens during Create and Lead. Okay? So you'll notice the Engage and Collaborate is November 2017. Can you believe it's November? I felt like when the calendar turned over, I was like, oh my goodness, this gotten here so fast. So we will be doing community summits, so we've got one more after today. We have focus groups, which are stakeholder specific groups that will meet on Wednesday and Thursday. Some examples of those would be a principal group that will be asked similar questions to what you're going to be exposed to today, but it's going to be all principal responses at once instead of a general session where anybody can come. And then we will also do an online survey. That survey, I'll post the link at the end of today's summit, but it's also already you can also locate it on Rockwell ISD's website. So the online survey is offered in English and in Spanish, so please share with your friends and neighbors and church members that they also can give their input via the survey as well if they were not able to make the summit. The design and create teams will happen November and January, and then the lead teams will happen in February so that we can bring the plan for approval to the Board of Trustees in the springtime. Okay? So one of the things that we really pride ourselves from Engage to Learn when we do a facilitation of a strategic plan is that we're really focused on input. We really want to get as much input as we can from the community so that everybody has a voice in the process. We're transparent, which is why you'll notice that we're doing videos so that anybody will be able to access this via the web and watch the summit or watch last night's summit or the summit before that, so you can see the different dialogue and conversations that took place. We also want to help and ensure that the plan is actionable, as I mentioned before. Okay? So what better way to start off the summit besides listening to the students of Rockwell ISD? So we have a little short video that we're going to play where Dr. Villarreal actually asks similar questions to students, and so you can hear directly from students how they feel things that they're passionate about. Okay? So let's listen to this video.
All right, thanks guys for being here today. We have some questions here that we want to ask our students. As many of you know, Rockwell ISD values excellence in our district, and we want to continue to be innovative. But part of the voice, or most of the voice, needs to come from our external customers and our internal customers. And our internal customers and external customers are our students. So I'm glad to have them here with me today. So guys, I have a few questions for you. You guys kind of just jump in whenever you feel like you want to respond to a certain question. But this is about you and for you as the district plans the future, okay? So the first question is what are things that you find engaging about school?
Well, personally, I really think that when we do discussions in English, and it's a lot like we do Socratic seminars and we talk about the literature that we're reading and the teacher engages with us and we're all allowed to just talk whenever we want to. I think that that's really engaging and really just broadens your mind on a lot of things, not just the book that you're reading.
Okay, all right.
One thing that I find engaging a lot in class is when we're doing hands-on activities. So like in physics, if we're doing labs, if we're making trebuchets or bridges, and we receive real-world examples of the education we're learning in class, and we get to see how it works in real life. That's what great way for us to engage.
Okay, all right, thank you. Cool. Okay, all right. Next question: how does school need to be changed to make those goals a reality? Or describe what would be happening in the classroom every day if we made these goals a reality.
I feel like we need to make classes more real world applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, a lot of the stuff I do, I don't really see how some of it applies to the real world. Or maybe I can, but maybe the teacher has a different view of that. And so I just want to be on the same page with my teachers on what this will help me with in the future, and not to mention be able to kind of narrow down my personal curriculum to what I feel like I'd be doing in the future and what I feel like, my path is.
That's great. In what ways could our schools be updated to be more real world?
Again, with the hands-on activities, I think a lot more of a hands-on activities approach to learning can be really helpful. A lot of our science and math classes already do it. But I think emphasis on that, and then as well, I think more of a teamwork aspect to be included in our education. When you get into the real world, you're not going to be working by yourself. You're going to be working with a team of people, a team of engineers, a team of designers, And I think if we can have maybe more focused group learning as well as like individual learning, that way we'll be more prepared for the real world.
And I feel like having career classes, like, as your elective, so you know how we have all these electives and people will say they're vague, people will say they, perfectly fit them. I feel like if we had, certain classes for, like, the more mainstream careers, if we had classes, designed to get you ready for that and you treated that as such with not so much emphasis on making the good grade, but more emphasis on, getting ready for what you'll be doing in the future.
Practical.
I feel like those classes, more practical classes would help us in the long run.
Awesome.
I personally love the thought of block scheduling because when you're in college, you don't take 8 classes a day. You take 2, maybe 1, and some days you even get off. And it's kind of hard to get someone's attention span and to get a workload done in 45 minutes. And then you have to go to another class. And that also goes along with the test. You're like, well, I have 45 minutes to take this test, and I have a test after this. And you would just have days in between to kind of get your brain, like, relaxed.
More classes that apply to, like, real world. Like, my parents were talking about when they were younger, they used to have, like, home education classes, like baking and taking care of a family and doing balancing checkbooks and stuff like that. I don't feel like we'd have enough classes like that to help prepare us for what we're going to have to do in the future and the things that we need to help even, like, raise a family, what we need to do if we're on our own, because in college we're on our own too sometimes. So, and I don't feel like enough people know what they're doing in college, so I feel like they get stressed out and have too much stuff that they have to worry about. So I feel like if we had classes that help prepare us for that we'd have more success in the future.
Fair enough. All right.
I agree with that, that we should have more just general life education. But then I also think that if we learned in a way that made us just want to learn and not just get a good grade on a test, that I think that would be really helpful in the real world. Because in the real world, you're not going to, like, take an exam over, like, accounting or something, like, while you're an accountant. Like, it's, you're learning things, like, as you go. And I think that if we did that in school, then that would be helpful to prepare us for what's actually going to happen rather than just have a test and then forget everything that you learned on the test and study for the next one.
Okay. All right.
One thing that I think Keith is starting to really stress is getting an internship, and so I know that there's a lot of internships for, like, engineering and culinary arts and the medical fields, and I'm personally in an internship currently, and I think that the experience that I've learned from that is crucial for, like, what I'm going to do later in life. So I get to work with a team of engineers every single day and work on projects that are actually being introduced into the real world. So I think it's a super great experience.
How does technology integrate with your learning? How do you use technology to make your life easier when it comes to learning in school?
I personally think it goes along with the real world thing because now in college you don't get papers, everything's online, and so now whenever we have everything on Google Classroom or Google Docs, like, it really just helps instead of, like, going through all these papers, and everything's super easy to access, and I love it. There's some things that we still want to do on paper, but I think it's more of a reality when you just go and look, okay, like, this is my class and this is what I have to do.
Okay. Right.
I think nowadays, since so many people use technology, that it helps for people to organize their priorities. Because, like, back then, people used to have these big binders and stuff with all these folders and everything for all these papers. But I feel like now, since everything's online, that not as many teachers need to start printing stuff off as to just having us keep it on our phone and try to organize it into little files and stuff like that to help keep it into just one little phone or a laptop or something instead of having to carry around all these big books and all these binders and stuff like that.
So do you organize using your iPhone devices, or do you have your own personal laptop? What kind of technology are you talking about?
I personally use my laptop to help organize all my documents, and I think the biggest part here is the organization. Like, I'm able to keep track of all my documents, and if I need to pull up an old document that I used maybe like 3 years ago, I can easily do it. I can just pull it up on my laptop and I'm good to go. And I think that's really helped me stay on top of all my homework and my workload.
I prefer to organize myself, actually on paper. I'll like put my whole agenda on paper just because when it comes to my phone, I use my phone for Twitter, Snapchat, music. I get so distracted, I just forget to check the agenda on the phone. But when it comes to paper, it's solid, it's right there, I see it, I remember writing it down, that muscle memory of writing it down. And so I just feel like technology is good in some aspects, but it shouldn't be the only resource, the only, source you have to organize, to do your classwork,
Right.
anything like that.
Right. Definitely agree with that.
All right. So when we start to think about what all of these fantastic students shared with us, right, it's a little bit enlightening, seeing some of the things they're passionate about and things that they care about, and also some of the differences that they had even amongst their small 6-person little interview team. There's actually about 40 minutes of footage of the students that we're going to be posting, and so that you can kind of see different things. We're also going to be providing it to the design team so they can see more of what the students had to say. But we definitely wanted you to be able to kind of just give you a little bit of taste of some of the seniors are thinking about and things that are important to them. So as we start to think about our students and where we are in Rockwell ISD, we really want to think with the end in mind. So sometimes it's really easy for us to think about, if I have a second grader, to think, what's important to me for my second grade teacher, for my second grade classroom that my child is in. But I want to challenge you a little bit today to think a little bit broader scale, to think about not just your individual second grader, okay, or 3-year-old, right, but also that you're thinking about overall, how might we really serve the students of Rockwell ISD really well for the next 5 years. So it's not just about where we are right now, it's how do we look beyond that and start with the end in mind so that we can ensure that we're preparing students for their future. Okay? So I want you to think a little bit about these 2 questions. What are your highest hopes for your children? And what do you hope that they get out of their time in school? So I think we can all agree that, let's think back to our own childhood. We spent a whole lot of time in school, right? A lot. We spend essentially 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year at school. So we hope that we get something extremely valuable out of that process. So when you're thinking about your highest hopes, I want you to allow yourself to go beyond passing a test, right? Passing a test is extremely important, but it's not the only thing. When we're talking about highest hopes, I want you to challenge yourself to think about when you held your child for the first time, or when you held your niece or nephew or grandchild, what were your highest hopes for that child? What did you want more than anything in the world for that child to be able to do? Okay? So I want you to really push yourself. Have a discussion with your shoulder partner. Those of you that recently came in, if you guys wouldn't mind coming down, we're going to do a lot of collaborative discussion with people in our proximity. So I would love it if you come sit near some of your community members and just have a really great discussion about your highest hopes for your children. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, and then we're going to share out whole group. Okay? like you guys are having some great conversation. I mentioned to you that you were also going to have a way to, if you prefer to text in your ideas electronically, I'm going to show you how to do that. You also can use your comment card, or you could use both. So if you text some answers in and you also want to write some answers, feel free to do both. Either way doesn't matter. So what we would love for you to do, the text poll works like this. So on your cell phone, where you would normally put the name of the person that you're texting, you're going to type in the number 22333. In the body of the text, where you normally type your message, you are going to type in engage to learn. It's the number 2, and it does not have to be in all caps. Once you do that, you'll get a message from my colleague named Sheila that you've joined the group. And so when you join the group, then you'll be able to start to post. Okay? So text the number that you're texting is 22333, and the body of the text or the message that you would normally send, you're going to type engage to learn with the number 2. Okay? All right, we're going to share out some of your ideas. So what are your highest hopes for your children? What do you hope that they get out of their time in school here in Rockwell ISD? So you can start to post here. You'll also notice some different posts from yesterday, so you'll be able to see the time frame. So when you're texting in, you'll be able to see your messages in real time once they load. So who would like to share what their highest hopes for their children are? Oh, we got one in the back. We're going to bring the mic to you so we can make sure to capture so everybody can hear.
I want my kids to leave school with critical thinking skills so that as they get out into the academic world and the real world and the working world, they can really think through the challenges that they face and make good decisions.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Being able to think through things, be able to think through challenges, kind of problem solve, in addition to that thinking critically, is an amazing skill to have, right? But it's not one that just happens overnight. It's one that we have to really work towards, that people feel confident. What are some other highest hopes that you have for your kids?
That they will have the academic and educational foundation to allow them to pursue whatever they choose to pursue, obviously, hopefully, college. My oldest is in college right now. And then to be able to live independent lives, where they have the ability to problem solving, analytic thinking, the ability to communicate, to write, but they have that foundation, the educational foundation that can help them later in life.
Awesome. Yep. So academic foundation that really almost like catapults them into whatever it is that they want to pursue later on. I love that. What other highest hopes do you have? One right here. You're going to get your steps in today. Right? You need to make sure we have that.
Something that we all agreed on immediately was contribute to society.
Mm-hmm.
We all agreed that the number one role of a parent should be you're raising your child to be a future adult, so make sure they contribute and you're not having to take care of them one day. So, that's one thing. And I think, like, today they're so pushed to just move to the next test. Mm-hmm. So all they're learning how to do is test. They're not learning how to work in their job one day. Stuff like that I kind of, But first and foremost, when my son was born, I was like, he's going to contribute to society. He's not going to pull the life out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, just learning to interact with, something I try to teach him is he'll come home and tell me, oh, so and so did bad on this, and I'm like, but I go, think about it. Maybe they don't have the environment you do. So let's figure out how we encourage them and not, talk about them. So sometimes I think what I'd like to see too is maybe how to reach kids that don't have the support at home. I think that's one thing that's missing big time. All the kids that are successful, they have the tools they need in school. I mean, most of them, because they're self-sufficient. But kids that don't.
I love that. So a couple of things that stood out to me about what you said was, really being a positive contributor to society, and then also being empathetic and trying to understand other people's circumstances and surroundings that they may not be exactly like your own. So I love that. Do I have anyone else, one last person that would like to share on their highest hopes for their children? Okay, right here. Let's go back and forth.
Well, to be very honest, I mean, when kids are little, you ask them what they want to be, and I want to be a doctor, I want to be, things like that. I want my kid to be happy. Whatever they choose. I don't care if you're the garbage man. I don't care if you're a plumber. I don't care, I don't care what you do if you're happy at doing it. So for me, instead of telling a kid in 7th grade, get ready for high school, you need to pick your major, because that's an endorsement, let them try everything. Let them go to a plumbing class. Let them go to an electrician's class. Let them try things. There may be some kid that has no idea that they're really, really great at welding. Never done it before. But just be happy in what you do.
Right. Exposure, so that they have the opportunity to develop a passion that they might not know yet exists, right? Also, instead of preparing them for one career, I think is getting them to be prepared for any career that they choose based on their interest or passion. That's great. Okay. So when we think about education, a couple of things I want you to think about. Has the purpose of education changed? Kind of what is that purpose? And then what is, if it's changed, what's changed in the last 100 years? How has that changed? So, say it again. Yeah, great. So we're going to actually talk a lot about that today. But I'm going to show you this quick little video that really kind of sets the stage for, gives you a little historical background on education.
Since the dawn of its existence, the purpose of public education has been fairly simple and straightforward. We want our kids to grow up to be happy, healthy, productive members of society. Even though our purpose in education has remained steadfast for over 150 years, a lot of things have changed. Remember the pioneer days? Well, probably not, but it looks something like this. During this time, people mostly lived in small rural communities and predominantly worked on family-owned and operated farms. So how did we educate and prepare children to function successfully in this environment? Well, unless you were rich enough to afford a private tutor, your children were educated in one of these, a one-room schoolhouse. Think about how well this matched the context of the day. School schedules matched the agrarian calendar, and students were educated in small, multi-age, cooperative learning groups. As students mastered the basics, they became apprentices, learning trades, crafts, the family business. We call this Education 1.0. Education imitated the lifestyle and work environments that people were engaged in at the time. But come the turn of the 20th century, society changed with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. In a very short amount of time, the living and work environment of our society quickly changed. People began to flock to major urban epicenters where jobs and commerce were widely available. New inventions and modes of transportation meant the rapid expansion of our economies. No longer were people working in fields and family trades, but instead in manufacturing plants and assembly lines. So what did we do to prepare young people to meet the needs of the day? We created an industrial model of schooling. Education 2.0. If most people worked in this environment,
then it made sense that we teach them in this one. In order for students to be successful in the industrial age, they needed to learn how to master repetitive tasks and how to do solitary work in a group setting. They needed to learn how to work in allotted segments of time and how to follow instructions from a manager who values the quantity of work produced. It was an efficient model that perfectly met the needs of society. Everyone was expected to learn in the same place, at the same time, at the same rate, and in the same way. Today we find ourselves in a time very different than the days of the Industrial Revolution. The context of society, and in turn education, has rapidly changed. Most of us don't work in factories or on assembly lines, and yet our classrooms still look like this. Things are changing, and changing fast. Technology is advancing so fast that in just a few short years from now, we'll probably be laughing about how archaic smartphones were, the same way that we laugh about 8-track players and VCRs. There is little about our world that resembles the world of Education 2.0, and as great as technological advances are, it may not be enough to put a laptop or tablet in front of every student and continue to teach them as if we were preparing them for an assembly line. After all, a vast majority of employers surveyed identified collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking as very important skills. Unfortunately, only about 1/4 of job seekers were rated as excellent in the skills employers believe are most important. Perhaps it's time we ask ourselves if Education 2.0 still prepares young people to be happy, healthy, productive members of society. The context of our society is rapidly changing, but the purpose of education remains the same as it's always been. Today, our job is to educate young people to be successful in the 21st century, because it may not be too long from now that your morning commute looks more like this. There's a vast world of possibilities for young people today, and if we want them to be equipped with the skills necessary to be successful in Life 3.0, then it's probably time that we start talking about Education 3.0.
All right, so let's think about this question that's going to come up on the screen, and it'll probably give you some chuckles. So let's think about, we're just going to popcorn out, what are some different technologies that kids have access to today that we didn't have access to? iPhones. What else? Tablets? Internet? I remember when the information superhighway was coming, and I was like, where is it going? And like, how do I find it? I thought it was like a true highway, because that was my frame of reference. So, and we can even think about now, like dial-up. That's, the original, and then where we are now, where we're connecting the super quick speeds, right? What are some other things that they have access to? Google, so cloud kind of platforms, search engines, Bluetooth. So there's tons of things out there that even 5-10 years ago didn't exist. I do not ever save a document on my actual computer, ever, because I'm afraid that it will go away. Something will happen, my hard drive might fail. I save everything on a cloud so that I can access it no matter where I'm at. And so I didn't even have that capability, 10 years ago. So things are changing very, very rapidly as we start to think about where we are and how technology is changing what we're doing. So let's think about economics, how quickly we can get information from the stock market and know how our stocks are rising or falling. Entertainment. I gladly canceled my cable subscription this year for the first time and went to streaming my cable to save a bunch of money. Netflix is now producing TV shows, and they stream where you used to have to get the DVDs in the mail. So even those kinds of things are rapidly changing over time. Communication, the way in which we communicate with one another, through text messaging, through FaceTiming. There's so many advances that just change the way in which we interact. And sometimes people will say not necessarily for the best, right? Because kids consistently text message and don't necessarily have those face-to-face conversations. our education is changing, the way that we customize things, how much digital content that we have access to, where you can get, help with different problems from somebody in another state that's able to help you. So there's a lot of different things we have access to. In addition to that, medicine is changing. The way in which we have advancements, technology is helping us at a rapid pace. So we may not necessarily love every aspect that technology provides to us, but we can't ignore the fact that it is changing the way in which we live. Okay? So I'm going to show you one more quick video that's really so that you can hear from some global CEOs about some of the things that they really think are important and how technology has changed their companies. Well, I think I'm going to show you that. Gotta love it, don't you? It's awesome. We're going to forgive that and we'll come back to it. Let's see. I'm going to unplug this just for a second so I can make sure that the internet's connected. Hopefully it'll get going here in just a second. We'll work on that. Yay! So as we start to think about it, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how when we're thinking about technology and how it's impacted us, there are so many different things that we need to consider. So it's not just having the technological skills to be successful, but it's also how do we combine that with our academic skills. So one of the questions that I'm going to ask you, because this technology isn't working, doesn't necessarily mean that the text poll isn't working. So you still can use that feature and also use your comment card. But I want you to really think about, in the video of the CEOs, they really talk about how much their companies have changed and how the need for people that are able to respond to technology really exists. So when we think about our students, our highest hopes for our kids, one of the things that I want you to consider is, what are the skills that our students need most to be able to thrive in today's society, right? So in the 21st century, what are actual skills that students need to be able to thrive, okay? So I'm going to have you talk with your shoulder partners. So just think about, in the context of the 21st century, what do our students need to thrive? Okay, so go ahead and have some conversation. about what are some of those skills, right, that our students really need to possess to be able to thrive in the 21st century. So what were some of the things you guys came up with? Right here.
Critical thinking is really one of those lost things out there that technology takes care of it for them, and so they don't have to step back and figure it out themselves, so they get those answers instantly. And
so I'll repeat it. She said critical thinking is one of those sort of like lost arts, right? Because a lot of times technology just gets answers to them. So we have to think sometimes I think about thinking critically, I think about if you can Google it and it can give you an answer, then it's not critical thinking, right? That's just a fact or a stat or something that you can, a question that can be answered. But it is definitely one of our students' first lines of defense. Let me just Google it. Let me get this immediate gratification answer very quickly. So that's definitely something, critical thinking is a great skill for students to possess. What's another skill?
writing. They know how to text. They know how to tweet. But to actually write an email, to be able to write an application for an essay for college, when they get in the workforce, to be able to write up a proposal or an idea, the ability to write and communicate.
Oh, and incomplete sentences. Well, that's sort of the issue with text messaging. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you. So, yeah, text messaging has really, I remember I was a 7th grade writing teacher, and I was like, we don't abbreviate words. Like, so when we're writing this essay, we're going to need to, like, type out B as B-E, like, because they're so used to text messaging, right? So, thank you so much. I appreciate your help. What are some other skills? I know there was someone in the back that wanted to share. It's on. Live mic.
Sorry, and I apologize if this come up before. I ran a little late from work. But I like the hands-on approach, and you guys might have already touched on this, particular thing. But I think, they do so much that the reading or when I'm on the electronics, like you were saying before, but to actually just get your hands into it, I know for my kids it's been more successful, to have that actual experience, and I feel like we've gotten away from that. Some of those studies, if you see, like, overseas, that's what they do. I think it's Sweden, it's ranked number 1 or something. That's what is, that's what they do, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's hands-on. I know in my son's science class right now, he is enjoying it so much, but he's learning so much, So for us, that would be my proposal, I guess.
Awesome. We've got time for one more right here. Do you want to pass that mic to the center?
I think that these kids are living in a world where everything, like we just said, is instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
You want information, you Google it. You want a thing, you go on to Amazon and you get it delivered the next day. Everything happens immediately. So I think they need to learn some persistence and some grit. That they're going to have to, not everything is going to come automatically. There's something to be said for having to work to achieve things.
I love that. So I love the word grit, because sometimes, let me just say, in life, things don't come as easy as we would like them. And we have to figure out what are we going to do. And I also think something that was said last night at a summit that I really loved was, if it takes that perseverance and that grit to keep going, and how do we see that as a learning experience and not just like, oh, I didn't do well on that, or I did, like, now what? What's the next step that we need to take to being able to have that as well? So those are some great skills. We're gonna get back to this in just a second. What I am gonna do is kind of hit back into this technology. If we're thinking about these skills that we're talking about here, right? And just taking a look at how things have changed. In the bottom right-hand corner, this is actually an assembly line, but look how technology has changed the assembly line. So it's not that we're not doing absolutely everything we did 50 years ago, but it's just that the technology advances have changed the way in which we do them. I want to ask you, maybe I don't. Can you just see if it'll advance? Perfect. What type of company do you think this is? Popcorn it out. Oil field. What else? Weather. some kind of security. It's actually a trucking company. So what's really interesting about this photo is to be very efficient for this trucking company, they have to monitor the weather. They have to monitor routes. It's very analytical in what they're doing. So it might be seen as something we've done, for hundreds of years, having a trucking company. But look how much it's changed based on the technological advances that are available to us. So we want to make sure that our students have our content knowledge and also that they have the technological knowledge to be able to do whatever career it is that they want to do, so that they can be what CEOs desire as the best candidate, not one of the candidates. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes, ma'am. Do you have a question? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Mhm. Yeah. So what she said was we didn't used to have access to all this information, so we just didn't have to worry about it. I think that's a valid point. I would say the information's coming faster and more furiously at us than ever before. And so you're right, there are some things that we wish maybe we didn't have access to all this stuff. I think the students that we have now and the ones that are coming towards us are going to have, they're going to seek it out even more because that's their norm, where it's not our norm. Does that make sense? So as we start to think about technology and how it's changed careers, here are a couple of stats. 27% of college graduates are working in the major that they went to school in, right? So that kind of goes to that exposure, right? Maybe they were exposed to another profession that they absolutely loved while in college or shortly after college. 72% of high school graduates plan to be entrepreneurs. And look how often kids are changing jobs, right? That wasn't necessarily the norm when we left high school or graduated college. It was seen as loyalty to stay in the same place, and now it's not seen as a terrible thing to switch jobs and to do different things because maybe there's a better opportunity, okay? So when we think about jobs created in the last 5 years, take a look at that just for a second. What are some ones that stand out? Number one, don't you want that job? Sounds so fun. That my nephew would love that job. Lots of different, look at 19, online reputation manager. Did that ever happen before MySpace and, who remembers MySpace, and Facebook, and Twitter, and Instagram? There's so many different things now that there's all these jobs that are available that didn't exist when we were going to school, right? When we were in our pre-K-12, these things didn't exist. So what jobs might exist when our kids are no longer in school? So we're trying to prepare our students for their future in a way in which we don't even know that it exists yet. So how do we do that? Okay? How do we ensure that our students are successful, productive, they live a meaningful life, they're able to realize those highest hopes and to create their own future and not move back home with us, right? I will say, there's always that special place if you need to come back, right? Of course. But we want them to be able to make that choice to live on their own, right? So this is a question I had you talk about before. So what are those skills we wanted children to possess to be able to thrive? And as we go through, this is a great little comic that I love. It says, I attended an elite college that cost $50,000 a year. Unfortunately, we're looking for people with good judgment. So it kind of goes back to problem solving, being a critical thinker. How do we make great decisions for ourselves and not just the first thing that, comes through the door, the first application that, that was accepted. How do we make really great decisions based on all the facts and not just some of the facts, okay? So These are a couple of thought leaders that have really started to think about how do we prepare kids for their future? How do we really ensure that students are prepared to go in life, college, career, whatever choices that they may make, okay? Ooh. Tony Wagner, you want to go back to the books? All right. Maybe. Let's go over here. There you go. Tony Wagner in the Global Achievement Gap identifies 7 survival skills that students should have. Look at number 1, adaptability and agility, right? Being able to maneuver and make adjustments based on the situation that you're in. Critical thinking's on there, problem solving, okay? Writing, oral and written communication is huge, okay? So when we're thinking about what top skills employers most want, the ability to work in a team comes in at number 1. When we think about how often that we partner with different people in the workforce, in life, on our PTA boards, right, when we're generally working with other individuals, we have to be able to know how to navigate those situations. How are we empathetic when someone does something and we don't really understand why? How do we communicate our intentions about something face-to-face versus to a text message that could get misinterpreted, right? So there's a lot of different things here that we want to consider. Attributes that employers seek on a candidate's resume, very similar skills. Work ethic, adaptability, initiative, problem solving. All of those things are what CEOs, what employers are seeking from our students. So we want to make sure that we're preparing them well. Top employers in DFW. There's a lot of opportunity here in the Metroplex, okay, for our students to be successful. And I've said this and I'll say it again. We want the students of Rockwell ISD to be the top candidate, not one of a pool of candidates. So how do we ensure that that actually takes place? Okay? Students need some soft skills, okay? So I love this quote because it talks about there's not one specific thing that people look for when hiring someone in a position, but the one thing they can get fired for is their lack of soft skills. If they can't interact with people that they work with, that's not seen as a great employee. It's not something that people want on their team. So how do we ensure that through our school system? Okay, we want to make sure that all the dreams, all the things that students are excited about, all those hands-on learning experiences that they have as young children mirrors what happens in their classroom so that they can still participate and do all those fun things, and it actually becomes their reality in the classroom setting and the learning experience. So let's talk about the learning experience. If we want all of these fantastic skills that our students, we know what they need to thrive, what behaviors, what needs to happen in the classroom, what do they need to be exposed to, okay, so that we know that those skills are being developed. So talk with your shoulder partner or turn around, have some discussion about what are behaviors students need to be involved in a classroom to ensure that those skills are developed. Okay? Couple minutes. some of those experiences that we want kids to be involved in the classroom setting that help them develop those skills that we know are so essential? Who would like to share some of those experiences? You can also text in. It is working. What are some ideas? What should be happening in the classroom? Okay, you're in the back. No worries. I'm going to get this lady in the pink, and then I'm going to come back to you, okay? All right.
Failure. As we were talking about, kids don't know how to fail these days, and when they fail, it's the end of the world. You know, and even the statement of happy, healthy, productive member of society. As you said, happiness is a choice. That's not something that a school district should be expected to teach a child. Health isn't something you can control. And then, but how can you be a productive member of society if your health is compromised or something like that? And so, to learn how to fail and to fail in a respectable fashion, you know, things like that, I think will help a child, you know, to be a much greater contributor.
One thing I love about what she said is to have the opportunity to fail, like in a almost in a safe way, right? So having the experience of knowing what to do when you fail. Right? How do we continue that instead of just being like, oh, well, I failed that test, I'm over it, or I failed that project, or I wasn't good at this, so now I'm just bad at math, right? So, right here, you guys want to share?
You said working in groups and not being able to change your group members, because the reality of it when you are in the work industry, your coworkers are your coworkers, and sometimes you're put on projects and the expectation is that the deliverable is met at a certain time, and you all have the responsibility to get it in at that time no matter what, and that might even mean somebody is slacking, but these are real life experiences, and this is what builds character in our children, which they are missing because of the technology in the world right now.
Thank you for sharing. So I love, she said work in teams, but also don't let them switch their partners. Because sort of learn to have that grit no matter what actually is in the dynamics in the team, right? Because if we all had desirable team members all the time, we wouldn't learn how to problem solve and how to navigate and how to, get around somebody's personality that may not be the most desirable that we want to work with. That's great. What other types of experiences or behaviors do kids need to be involved in? Hand up.
I think everyone, when you do the cafeteria style, you got to think outside that, because if you're a police officer or if you're a first responder or anything that requires that, you don't have time to stick to a book. You've got to act. A police officer has to know how to do those things on their own. A firefighter, every second counts in those kinds of jobs. Not everyone is going to be in a job. There are people where you're going to have to be a self-starter.
Yeah.
And most successful people, the reason why they became successful is because they came up with an idea that wasn't thought of at first. I mean, today with IT and all those things, growing up, that wasn't a job. And the people who came on the internet, and you have all these classes for internet, there was no internet class. The people who founded that and navigated that were self-starters. They were the ones who were the innovators that went outside of the box.
Yeah, I love that. Giving them the opportunity to have that exploration and to come up with different ideas is kind of what I'm hearing you say, because that is where some of those great ideas come from, is just being able to have some time to experience and to explore. One more time for any behaviors that you think kids should be involved in their time in school to help cultivate those skills. One right here.
Just going to be devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
The behaviors, working in a group, is fine and dandy, and it's wonderful, except when you're in a class of 28 fifth graders. And it's a bell curve. You've got some over here that are struggling. You've got majority up here. You've got a handful over here that are way ahead. How do you work in a group? You know what I mean? When the teacher is struggling just to maintain her 7 hours, you know what I'm saying? And trying to get everybody on the same page. Well, not necessarily though. But no, I mean, what I'm saying is, it's bigger than a company can come into a school district and change things and we're all better. It's at a state level, at a federal, I mean, we're just, do you build more schools? Do you hire more teachers? You see what I'm saying? I mean, a smaller classroom setting, and, I'm going to throw this out there too, and I apologize. What about the children that have behavioral issues? Talking about behaviors. Well, that's not a workplace norm. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm in the wrong workplace. Is it? I was about to say, maybe. Well, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So, but that's what I'm saying. It gets very hard to teach them to work in a group when the group is so many, or the teacher can't even control the group. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's a different level.
Also, and that's.
I totally agree, 100%. 100%. If we can get all these parents on board, we're good.
Yeah.
But no, I agree, 100%. Yes. 100%.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is, in addition to, let's just put students in a team, working in a team, that the proximity itself isn't going to cultivate all of those skills. It's more work has to be done on how to work in that team, which is, we're going to get into our next question, how do we as educators facilitate that in our classrooms with an honest number of 28 in a room or 22 in a room, right? How do we navigate that piece? So valid point as we start to think about these things. So as we start to brainstorm, remember, we're thinking about our highest hopes and how we're thinking it way in advance. This isn't going to change overnight, right? But how do we start the conversation so that we can put things in place where these learning experiences do happen and they happen successfully, right? So thank you very much for your input on that. I appreciate that. So my next question for you leads right into this, so thanks for the segue. So what is the role of the teacher in this process? So if we know that these are skills we want kids to develop, if we know that the learning experience should look a certain way so that those skills can be developed, what is the role of the teacher? So I want you to talk about that. How does that role, similar to the role current, how does it change, if it changes at all? So talk with your shoulder partners or your row little small group teams about the role of the teacher. What skills does a teacher have to facilitate those learning experiences and those behaviors? Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, couple minutes. back together and let's share. What are some of the skills that teachers need to possess? What is the role of that teacher in these learning experiences? Yes, ma'am.
One thing I was thinking about is parent education. So maybe have like a forum where the teacher, I don't know, for an elementary school, and the teacher says, okay, parents, here's what happened in my classroom the other day. Here's what I think you could do to help me with that. Just because you never know. I mean, parents may think that school's just, one big party all day. I mean, they may not know what the teachers are really facing. So sometimes I think just exposing them and saying, look, here's what happened the other day. Johnny, we were trying to do this group thing, and Johnny just, you don't call it names, but just say, this is what happened. Here's some ideas that I think you could help me with. So
I think what I'm hearing you say is really, teachers becoming like a teammate with parents and kind of sharing some of that knowledge.
Even like, just a meeting in an evening just for parents or something. Like instead of a PTA meeting, parent-teacher forum to just say, look, here's what I'm seeing. What are some ideas you have to help with that?
Yeah. All right. Some other ideas? Yes, ma'am. Let me get you a mic.
I think allow the teachers to teach and have more control over their curriculum, period. I think a lot of people don't realize, which is shocking to me, the whole No Child Act was from the federal government, which then they passed down to the state. We're still doing the same thing. The teachers, even in Rockwall, have some control over implementing the curriculum that's dictated, and that's not the fault of the administration either. It comes from the state level and goes to the federal government. Parents need to be more involved. When they implemented STARS, you kind of pushed parents out of the classroom and you nullified the teacher. That's dangerous. That caps the amount of communication that you have as a parent and how much control the parents and teachers have over implementing the. It's just that simple. And the other thing is parents need to take more responsibility for their kids and teaching them at home on right and wrong and taking responsibility for their actions. You need to write your congressman. Even Rockwell, we have a budget shortfall. A lot of people don't realize the the Robin Hood Act passed legally. The state takes half of our tax dollars and distributes it to underprivileged districts. There is a cap on what we get to keep. If we don't have enough money to meet the needs of our children, how are you going to have a great, conducive curriculum? It's just that simple. We need to get more involved.
Thank you. No? You hear the passion, so thank you for sharing. So would someone else like to share what skills a teacher needs to have and the role of the teacher through the process? Okay.
I think that the teacher themselves also need to have character as well. They need to possess the skills that we're trying to implement into the children. The leadership. I think that a teacher should be able to have good classroom management. No matter if you do have behavioral issues, with your students, and also have the freedom to still teach the curriculum that's given in a way that their students can understand. So the teachers are in the classes with our students. They know how our students can receive the message. Let them tweak it to where it's easy for their audience to grasp what they're wanting them to learn. And I'm thinking right now, teachers may not have that freedom.
So I'm hearing you say freedom and support to be able to make adjustments as they see fit. Okay. So anyone else like to share role of the teacher or skills that they need to possess to be able to create these? Right there.
Well, I have a high school girl, and we use Remind. It's a new app in the iPhone, and I think either the kindergarten teacher to 12 senior kids need to use it because I have a nice conversation and a nice connection with some my daughter's school, and it's a great help. it is all teacher needed.
So she's, referring to Remind the app and how that's helped to have a great relationship with what's going on in her children's classrooms at school, and how that would be great for everyone to use something like that. So that's awesome. All right, any last minute? I felt like there was one. We need to get you a mic just so we can make sure everyone else can hear it.
I just think that teachers need to be adaptable. They need to be able to adapt to the changing environment. And that's a skill we want for our kids, but that's also a skill we all need. And teachers need to do that too, because your kids are going to be different. Every class period is going to be different. It just depends. You have to be flexible in that, but that takes education and it takes experience. Yeah. It's not something that just happens naturally.
True. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So as we consider those things, many of you kind of touched on some other systems in that previous share out. But if we know that there's skills that teachers need to possess, there's a desired learning experience that needs to happen so that students can develop the skills that we know they need to have in life, what are changes to the system that need to take place? System's a really broad word in this sense. But I want you to think about, with regard to time, school schedules, grouping and grading, programs or courses that are offered, learning environments, what they look like, curriculum or assessment. So as I mentioned, a couple of you touched on this system question in the previous one. So I want you to have some dialogue about this. What are changes to the system that we really need to happen so that the learning experience does look like what we think is going to prepare our students for their future? Okay? So what are some of those changes? So talk with your neighbor about what are changes to the system that need to occur. All right, so let's not forget we can text in our responses or putting them on your comment card. We want to make sure not everyone shares every time, and we don't want to have one voice left unheard, so please use one of those systems to be able to, so that we're able to capture your input. So what are some ideas, what are possible changes to the system that we think might need to occur to ensure those learning environment skills that teachers have, and ultimately then that impacts the skills that students have? Yes, ma'am.
This is old-fashioned textbooks for every core class, whether it's online or a physical textbook. But I have found my kids have gone all through Rockwall, and particularly middle school, there seems to be a dearth of textbooks. They hit high school, and sometimes there's more, but my son's a freshman in college. And in college, they have books. And our kids are learning that you only need to learn what the teacher teaches and puts on in the PowerPoint. Whereas when they get to college, they're going to be responsible for that, but they're also going to be responsible what's in the outside reading in the textbooks. And then if you have someone who is struggling or needs help or is sick and is absent, having a resource like a textbook, whether it's online or physical, is quite beneficial. And I feel that's a basic necessity.
All right. What are some other ideas? Maybe someone who hadn't shared yet today. Oh, awesome. Let me get you a mic. If you guys don't mind, maybe you'll passing this down to the center. Oh, look, I can walk through. The last PAC I was at was a little closer together. So,
About grouping grading, I think that it's great that they put different kind of people in the same group. But about grading, like my daughter always is very responsible, so she's always finishing the work of other kids. So, in some point, I don't care my daughter is doing the job, she knows what to do, but what's happening with the other kids that are having a good grade and they are learning, so it doesn't matter that I don't do the job, I will get a good grade because I'm the one that will finish the work for me.
So what I'm hearing you say is some accountability for everybody within that group setting, and even though it may be a group interaction, having some individual accountability for that. Yes, sir.
So I haven't fully thought this through, so bear with me as I'm thinking out loud. What if you were to design the curriculum such that it is based on outcomes? So, for example, one of your outcomes or one of the desires is to have a skill of creativity. So, for example, in your biology class or in your history class, government class, you do something creative, and as part of, so you're still learning the content, but you have an activity or an assignment around a skill set that you're hoping to cultivate. So that would require a lot more collaboration, of course, with the teachers and the curriculum. But each day you have a desired outcome. We're going to teach Shakespeare, and we want to do critical thinking. For example, that's one of the top things that employers are looking for. Or something creative. So you do something creative around the content. So not only are you learning the content, but you're fostering a skill set that you can apply this knowledge, and it applies to future job efforts.
Thank you. So to sort of summarize this thought is, how do we ensure content knowledge and also those future-ready skills that we know kids need to develop over time? How do we do that in tandem and not think of those as two separate things? How do we do those things and have a focus at those skills daily, right? Other ideas for changes to the system? Okay, and over here. Thank you. I was going to get an extra step.
I think we need smaller class sizes. Technology cannot substitute for a good teacher in a classroom facilitating among students.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Get them outside. I know when I was in high school, we'd go walk out to open lands and we'd be doing something for biology and writing a paper and covering English too. Just get them outside, get them touching things, get them seeing things, make it real, let their creativity flow.
So kind of getting out of the, breaking out of the four walls of the classroom, expanding what we sort of note as the classroom, would be a great way to think about that. So this is our time for our last one.
I have recently spent some time in my daughter's classrooms, and I am kind of almost shocked at the number or lack of paras in the classroom. I'm sure. I'm sure, like in every elementary classroom across the map, there is just a wide range of abilities, and sometimes a whole grade or two grades. And for one teacher to master that, I think, is so difficult, where the child who is, behind is trying to play catch up, and they're in first grade now, and then they're in third grade still trying to play catch up, and then seventh, and then 10th, and just a hard path.
All right. I'm going to try not to walk backwards, because then it might be really embarrassing. So let's think about, if we are thinking about the role of a teacher, changes to the system, skills we want kids to develop in thinking about learning experiences in a different way, let's think about sort of the culture of the district. So what behaviors should everybody, right, that's involved in Rockwell ISD exhibit? What kind of culture would we want to ensure that all of these things are able to happen? It's a very broad question for a reason. Okay, so I really want you to think, when we think about culture, organizational culture, right? So I'm just going to give you a local example, Southwest Airlines. Okay, so they are known for their culture. They are known for their behaviors lend a certain way. It's about customer and really kind of focusing on that. What type of culture would need to exist, right, to ensure that the role of the teacher is what we think it should be, the learning experiences is happening, the skills are being developed, all of those things are coming to fruition. Remember, this is not something that changes overnight, but as we look with the end in mind, what would the culture be like? What behaviors would people in Rockwell ISD exhibit? Let's talk about that in a small group. Okay. Okay, so let's think about this question. What are behaviors that should be exhibited from everyone in Rockwell ISD, and what type of culture would that represent? So right here.
So I guess something we were talking about is from the ISD itself, hire not just teachers,
Correct.
Just overall. I have personal teacher and staff friends that have made the comments that their kids, because Rockwell ISD, they do well for themselves for the most part, and they can be paid off almost, so their kids don't fail.
their kids failed a project, the teacher's scared to fail them because now they're going to get sued because daddy's a lawyer or whatever the situation, right? I feel like if and that kind of goes back to, how we're helping our kids, right? If you failed, you need to learn from that, right? How could you do better? Maybe that teacher worked with them, but if they literally didn't put the effort in and was that whatever it was, then as an ISD, we need to, I don't know that gets into politics, but we need to back. You failed where you failed. And if you don't like it, go to a private school. I mean, it is what it is, but this is the public education. We're trying to do good for our kids. These are the standards, and, your kid just didn't do or whatever it was. You know what I'm saying. But I think that accountability.
I think what I'm hearing you say is really ensuring that everybody's held to the same standard, and that there is that the behaviors we want to exhibit in our kids, we need to be the example of that, right? So there's a comment back here.
As I was sharing with her, my husband and I are in charge of Watchdogs, and for those of you that aren't aware of what Watchdogs is, it's Dads of Great Students. And it's our daughter in elementary school, and it's amazing how many teachers don't like it when the dads come to the class, yet they found that when there's a male on campus, graduation rates increase, attendance rates increase, and because again, it's a mainly female-driven, world, if you will, and so for the teachers to have a more open view. And again, my husband's in charge, and he knows to be quiet and not, speak up and tell the teacher what she's doing right or wrong. And he still has teachers that say, no, I don't need you. But this is where the principal has actually assigned him for the day. And to add to that, I almost died this summer, and so the current principal was in charge of it at his previous school, and they were just going to cancel the program and not do it this year because they thought I was going to be dead, and so we won't have the program. Okay, no, embrace this program. This is getting parents involved. Let's grab a hold of that. And if I'm dead, well, my husband, he's going to want to be at school with our kiddo, even more so, because she's going to need some extra, daddy loving and daddy attention, and some of her friends may too, going, wait, if her mommy died, can mine? And so just more of an ability from every single staff member, within the school district to say, we want what's best for the kids, not what's best for me, not what's best for you, what's best for the kids. How are we going to actually grow them? How are they going to learn to stand up and fight? And obviously I mean that in a good fashion. But, how are they going to learn to grow? How are they going to learn to endure if, well, she's going to die, so we'll just cancel the program? No. How do we endure? How do we keep going?
I think one thing, first let me say, I'm super excited that you're still here and able to share with us today. So that is a huge blessing. I also want to really kind of focus on one part of your comment that kind of struck me. That was, education is always going to be the profession where we are doing and doing and doing and doing. That's just the nature of where we are. And we, as educators, accept that at charge. We embrace it. But I think one thing you said was if it's what's best for kids, let's get on board. So having that open mind, being able to embrace some of the things that maybe are going to take a little bit more time or do a little bit, but actually just keeping the kids the number one focus, so that it may not be, the initiative that you absolutely love the most, but if it's what's best for kids, let's jump on board for that. So thank you for sharing. Right here?
I think that one of the key thoughts is parental involvement with the teachers, and I think she kind of hit on it, but not allowing the parent to know there's no intimidation, but the parent has to be involved in the kids' learning. And if like my child, if he's struggling, I want the teacher to be able to at least give me feedback on what I need to work in. It's my job as a parent to also make sure they're getting that quality education. And if he has deficiencies and I have the ability to do it, it's my job as a parent to find out how I can better those deficiencies. It's not my job to let the state handle my child. It's my job as a parent.
let me be the parent.
And I love the idea of really kind of focusing on that, the partnerships between the district, because I really feel like that's kind of the partnerships between parents, community, and the schools, and how can we strengthen that? What are some ways in which we can have that focus? So we've got time for these. Well, there's 4, so let's just take 2. So let's do this lady right here and then this lady in the yellow, if you don't mind. But please put it on your comment card so we can make sure to capture input.
I believe on top, and I agree with what everyone's saying, 100%, but I also think once you have older children, meaning junior high and high school, is grooming your children to reach out to their teachers first, making them the first line of communication. Meaning my daughter, in 8th grade, if she misses school or we're doing a philanthropy thing on Thursday and she's going to miss half the day. So she's already on her own emailed her teachers. Now, if they have a problem and they can't get the help they need, then I'll step in. That's my role, to protect. But it's about getting them ready for independence. And so it's a grooming process at home, too. Plus, with large schools, it allows the teachers to go, I know that kid. They're working. I might give them the benefit of the doubt.
For me, on the side of the district, I think that especially the counselors need to have the knowledge to guide us. Because last year my son graduated from high school, and it was hard to know what is out there, what are the opportunities, what are, what can I do for him. So now my daughter is in 7th grade, and her counselor, oh my God, she knows. If I go and ask her something, she will have the answer for me.
I think that definitely goes back to those partnerships and figuring out how do we get all the knowledge that we have to help our students, how do we get it in the hands of parents and the community and ensure that there's that symbiotic relationship for our students to be successful, okay? I'm going to, okay.
I just wanted to share this. This happened just the other day. My grandson in math, he was struggling. He just didn't get it, and I would help him, And the teacher sent a little thing saying, if I can't make it on this day, come in the morning to either of the teachers that were there. And he went in. I said, do you know this teacher? He goes, yeah, I know this teacher. I said, well, go in there, and maybe the way she teaches, you'll get it. And so when I went to pick him up, he said, Grandma, I got it. I didn't get it the way Miss So-and-so taught me, but I got it the way Miss who did. And maybe that's what we need to do. The ones that are struggling, maybe they need to say, you know what? Why don't Miss So-and-so, try? Instead of just, oh, you didn't learn it, sorry, you didn't pass.
Yeah.
But the opportunity was there, and he took it. He's like, well, maybe I didn't get it, what I was supposed to learn. But Miss So-and-so, I got it, So maybe that's what they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because just the way I teach it might be totally different than the way Miss So-and-so teaches.
Oh, believe me, the way that I learn math is not the way math is taught anymore. So I can even begin to help my nephews with math. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. I use FOIL. Yeah. So as we start to sort of wind down the summit, I want to go back to the process so you can kind of see where we are. We're in the engage and really collaborate phase where we're really seeking input. So one of the things that I want to do is recognize Stephanie Adams, the board president that's here with us. So we really appreciate your courageous leadership with the superintendent to really seek out community input in this process. So thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate that. Those of you that are in attendance, I would love for you to just share with, 2, 3, 5 people and say, hey, there's one last opportunity to come to this summit. It's a great opportunity. They really do care about what we have to say. Our voices are heard here. So please encourage, text some of them, even on a group text, and say, hey, it's 6:30 to 8:30 at the same location. We would love to have just more members of the community here to share their thoughts, their highest hopes for the students here in Rockwell ISD. We're taking all this input from your comment cards, from you texting in, from the videos, and really thinking about how do we ensure all the things that are on your hearts and minds, okay? So we will get all that information to a design team. It's about a 40-member cross-section of stakeholders within the district, which means community members, parents, staff members, even some student participation. And then we really think about how do we start to create action plans and how do we carry those out so that it actually starts the ball rolling. So it really kind of focuses on this 5-year plan. So one of the ways that you can help out is to participate by the online survey, which I'm about to show you. Communicate, invite other people. The website also has the survey information and the location of tonight's summit, if you forget. So here are the dates at which things are happening. The online survey opened yesterday and will go through November 17th, which is the day before Thanksgiving break. Woohoo! Focus groups are tomorrow and Thursday. We will gain more input in those meetings as well. Then you'll see design, create, and lead teams. Here are the survey. There's an English version and a Spanish version. The links are also located on the website. This is just a short link to help you get there quickly. No, the survey is a little bit different. And so it's a great point. You can attend the summit and fill out the survey. We actually encourage both because it asks some specific questions that we would love your input on. And we just want to say one more time how much we appreciate you giving up your lunchtime to be with us. The ideas that you shared, the discussion and the dialogue that you had with your community members is so valuable to this process, and we really appreciate you coming out this afternoon. So thank you so much. And you can always come back to tonight's summit if you have, 2 hours, want to spend dinner with us. So have a great afternoon, everyone.